Okay, so we are on day 2 of Mishlei 1527. We have some clarifications for translation here. So, Ocher beso botea bata v'soneh matan siyateh. So we translated as one who gains illegally. It could also mean one who gains through greed. We saw meforshim say that, or so we saw English translators say that. Sullies, corrupts, or pollutes his house. But one who hates or dislikes gifts will live. So our YouTube friend commented, the primary meaning of the root ע.כ.ר is to stir up, to trouble, or to disturb. When you stir up, say, water in a river, the dirt on the riverbed rises, muddying the waters, hence the phrase mayim achurim. But since the object here is bias, I don't think muddy, sully, or similar translations are the best fit. Okay, so I double checked. And so the Klein dictionary does say to stir up, disturb, or trouble. It also says to become turbid, which is what I was saying yesterday, like to, murky, unclear. But then the Radak says, so he quotes all these in the Sefer Zera'im, quotes all these sources, but he says Rabbi Yonah. Now I think here's what's confusing. Who would Rabbi Yonah be referring to if he's quoting in a grammar book?
I don't know.
Anyone know? This is just good knowledge to know.
When was he alive?
Radak was in 1160 to 1235.
So where's Rabbi Yonah?
Our Rabbi Yonah is, I think, later, slightly later. Rabbi Yonah is 1200 to 1263. So I'm pretty sure it was it?
Would it be called Rashi?
That's ע.כ.ר. Shlomo ben ע.כ.ר. So Rabbi Yonah, I think it's Ibn Janach. Okay. Never how to spell it. Janach, yeah, Janach. So Ibn Janach was one of the first grammarians. Okay. The only problem is that ע.כ.ר also has Ibn Janach in the old dictionaries, and Ibn Janach doesn't say what the Radak says he says, unless he says it elsewhere. So, but let's read what the Radak says. Radak says, in the name of Rabbi Yonah, kasav kihu shem, so it's a noun. Umishkalo b'mishnah, and he quotes cases in the Mishnah, nivrechas hakovsim, inyanam inyan hashchasa. So he says it does refer to corruption or, destruction of some sort, right? Okay, so I'm totally fine saying that, yeah, the primary meaning of ע.כ.ר is to dirty waters, but like in English, we use metaphorical language all the time. If you say like, I'm not so clear on the idea, I'm not saying, oh, well, clear really refers to a substance, and so your thoughts can't be unclear. Like, no, obviously, and so if you have like dirty and clear waters, then you can have dirty and clear, reputations, dirty and clear other stuff. So I'm fine going with this translation.
So what was his point?
His point was, he said that it's not a good translation to say muddy or sully, and he wanted to say troubled. And I did look through the meforshim, and there are meforshim who do seem to say that it means trouble, but there are also ones who say yashchis beso. So I'm fine going with the meforshim.
Why can't you just? Why can't you just simply say that ע.כ.ר, he's using Shlomo could be using the term ע.כ.ר as something that means trouble, but like it also translates sully, it just kind of means the same thing, no?
Yeah, I think it's going to ultimately come down to the same thing. Yeah, right.
It fulfills both.
Right. I think the only difference would be that if it means to trouble, then I think the thrust would be more of like it causes trouble for the members of your household. Whereas if it's sully, then you could say stuff like we said of like it'll taint the image of something or like cause people to view it in a certain way. Yeah, Isaac?
I think it's a normal English euphemism to say that they like sully your reputation.
Exactly. Yeah, and you got to imagine that similar language was in other
So
cultures.
where were we getting sully from?
Well, I got it from, I think, from ع.כ.ר originally, but like, and if you look at the psukim, let's say, for example, let's see.
He's more technical. We're more
yeah,
That's the focus.
This can't be that's the only place where it says ע.כ.ר.
That is a good question.
What's a good question?
I mean, like I hear side, but I also hear yours.
It's not really he's challenging the meaning of the word. I don't know if it's a question. He's just saying that he's saying that what I said the word means doesn't really mean that. Lamed Dalid Lamed? Is that where I was at? Yomer Yaakov Shimon El Shimon Levi Achartem Osi Lahabisheni Biyoshev Aretz. So this is after the Shimon and Levi kill the take revenge against the Dina abductors. You have Achartem Osi. You have achartemed me to make me putrid among the inhabitants of the land. So Neiman Novetsky says, you have caused me trouble, making me repugnant. What does Onkelos say here? Onkelos says, Khartoon. Yeah, see, okay, that doesn't help. Yeah, right.
What's the thing about Shmuel?
Shmuel, did you see? Oh, did
So Shmuel Yudal, I think Shmuel Yudal Chavzai, maybe I saw.
where did you see that?
I saw it on your document.
On my document.
That you.
Yeah. Hold on. You mean on the
On the word.
Yeah, just a second here. You mean? I'm just going to go to the hyperlink. Shmuel here.
Yeah.
ע.כ.ר avi es haaretz. Yeah, I mean that does seem to mean trouble. ע.כ.ר avi es haaretz. They translate it here as my father has troubled the land. Yeah. So again, I'm not disagreeing with the fact that it means trouble. I just think here it's fine to say solid. Okay, let's go to the questions. So the question is, what is the subject of the pasuk? What's the decision-making scenario? What does beso mean in this context? Literal house, household, legacy, something else. What is meant by ע.כ.ר beso? I'll add here just for clarification purposes. He troubles his house or he sullies his house. Is this consequence specific to beso? If so, why? If not, why specify? What does botei abata mean? What are the parameters? Especially if it means to gain through greed. That's very, very murky. All right. How does botei abata result in achiras beso? What's the cause and effect? How is this effect confined to this cause in this context? So what for the first half? What exactly is bad about this? 9. How are the two halves opposites? Even if they are, what's the what of the unstated counterparts? So what about the lifespan of the botei abata? Right? Sonim matas yichyeh botei abata yamus, or just not yichyeh, or something. What about the bias of the sonim matanos? Is it will become enhanced, or is it just not become sullied or troubled, or like yishalev, be at peace? How are botei abata and sonim matanos opposites? How are ע.כ.ר and yichyeh opposites? 10. What does yichyeh mean in this context? Is it improving the quantity of life, the quality of life, or is it olam haba or something else? 11. What kind of matana is it talking about? 12. How does sonim matanos result in yichyeh? What's the cause and effect? Is he directly extending his life, or does the sinas hamatana prevent his life from being shortened? 13. What does sonim matanos mean? Is it just an emotional attitude, or is there some action associated with it? I also want to add, oh no, I'm not going to add there. Oh yeah, I also wanted to add, I forgot to mention this yesterday about the parameters. Oh, maybe that's the practical application. Yeah. 14. Why is the second half so extreme? Hatred and living. 15. What about the middleman? Someone who is not botei abata and also not sonim matanos. 16. What is the practical application and its parameters? For example, should a person reject all gifts no matter what? I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday, but what about Kohanim Leviim? Right? They live off of gifts, right? And they're called matnos kahuna, so like, what attitude should they have towards gifts? I think that's an important question. Yeah, Isaac?
I just wanted to ask if we could maybe talk more about this. I think we didn't discuss this so much when we were discussing the ideas.
Discuss what?
This question, 16.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sure. And then why is the second half more popular than the first half? That's a sociological question. Okay, so I want to review, but I want to do meforshim on what we reviewed. Okay, so we had Isaac's idea, which is when you accept a person's gifts, there's never no strings attached, even if it's just a debt of gratitude. Oftentimes there's an expectation of reciprocity. The only way to avoid this entirely is to not accept gifts. It's expressing it as hatred because these are the long-term consequences of all gifts. And if that's real to a person, he'd hate gifts naturally because of the uncertainty of what he owes. So in other words, it's not that you necessarily will reject all gifts, but you will naturally, it's giving you like a shiur in how real this idea is to you, that you're going to be reluctant to accept gifts, even if you might have to at some point. So the commentator I found, I'll go back to your idea in a second, Ariel. Commentator I found that most directly expresses this is Ibn Kaspi in his first pirush on Mishlei, which you don't have there. ע.כ.ר beso botei abata v'hu hakodem b'siba. So he's also saying that really it's botei abata ע.כ.ר beso. Zonim matanos afal pish yitnu lo yikabo. Even if they give it to him, he will not accept it. V'zo midas hachacham. This is the trait of a chacham. Abraham Avinu ve'Elisha. Like Abraham, which I assume is with the Maras Machpelah. Is there any other case you can think of with Abraham? Oh. Yeah. What was the case there? Just remind me of the facts.
He defeated the 4 nations.
Oh, is that what he's?
So wants to get all the spoil.
That's right. Yeah, that's probably what he's referring to. And then Elisha, was that not accepted? Well, I know the thing where he did accept the gift from the woman, but I don't know what the Elisha case is. My Tanakh knowledge is woefully lacking, like many of us.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, Ela im kain hayat sarich lo hachacham, unless that might be the Elisha thing also, unless he needs it. V'hinach roeh ki yavo nizakim rabin la'adam mizulaso ba'avur lakcho mimeno matanos umigdanos. So you'll see, this is not exactly Isaac's idea, but I think it's related. Many harms come to a person from others because he accepted gifts, and McDonald's literally means cakes. So I was like, gifts and cakes. And then I looked, McDonald's also means gifts. So yeah, maybe they just, there's a common gift back then. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so from accepting gifts and other favors that are not necessary. Oh, this is Isaac's idea. Sometimes this will make a person indebted to the other guy via sigenu nezagado, and he'll get a lot of harm here. Okay, so I think that's a good statement of Isaac's idea. And then Ariel, you want another shot at what you were saying?
Yeah, just 2 minor points. One is the pasuk. The pasuk, I think you touched upon this like briefly. Like the pasuk just says gift. It doesn't say receiver or the giver. I also I thought about it. I thought about it more last night.
Yeah.
Like you could see a person like if he's like a very chashuv individual, like a very big guy. Like I think if he even accepts a gift, it may make the other person feel better.
Right. But, yeah. There's definitely
So it's not just on the giver. Oh, you owe me something. The giver says, "Oh, you owe me something." The giver is giving because like he himself wants to feel appreciated by the mere fact that he's accepting something.
Right. So it is a delicate balance, and that's why I do think that this is not. I don't think this is saying you should never accept gifts, because that could harm you even more if the guy is trying to. Yeah.
Which kind of goes into the question that you just asked before about what about Kohanim Levim, and I was kind of alluding to that yesterday when I did Rav Pesach as an example.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I think it's fine if you give or receive gifts, but you have to have a framework of there's a greater reality out there than just your own personal feelings when receiving gifts and whatever. Like you have to be removed from that emotional.
Yeah, I agree.
Attachment.
Right. I also just another answer for the Kohanim and Levim thing is that in that case, I mean, I guess I'm just spelling out what you just said, which is that the gifts are not personal. It's so that they could be involved in learning and avoda and teaching, and if they take it in that framework, yes. But then what's the B'nai Eli? They abuse that privilege of
they
women wait.
Right.
But what was the particular hate?
Women wait longer than they had to, so they couldn't go home to their houses.
Or they took more meat or something.
That was that you could tell that there was a personal profit reaping motive.
Yeah, so I would go further and say this can be up for debate.
Okay.
Even in the world of Mishlei, you could say that if there is a practical, objective purpose in giving a gift or not, I would say it's fine. It just can't satisfy your
right. Meaning if it's
if it
is I the only thing I'll debate about it is I'll say that that's a good rule of thumb, but I do think that there are lots of cases where it serves a practical need, but also satisfies a personal thing. And in those cases, you have to weigh the individual factors.
That's the emotional part. You have to.
Yeah, but I think that's why. I think that's why he frames it as hating gifts, because if he said rejecting gifts, that just would not be that's not a good practical rule of thumb. But hating gifts is, because it this is a move I've seen Mishlei make before, where if there's a natural reaction, you should program yourself to have the opposite reaction to pause, so the natural reaction is, oh, gifts.
Yeah.
But if you're oh, gifts, then it'll at least create an opportunity to evaluate whether this is going to create these problems or not.
Yeah.
Moshe?
I was going to say something, but you mentioned it.
Okay. Ezra, you also doing?
No.
Okay, Moshe.
Regarding matnos kahuna, aren't they different because their obligations on the people to give? Meaning, isn't that a larger question, how you call them gifts if they're out?
It is a good question. I'm kind of taking that as a framework that we call them gifts, and like, the Torah could have called them misim, like taxes, and like, so I and then maybe there's other reasons to call them gifts. I was just wondering, like, at the end of the day, though, like, experientially, if you're a Kohen or a Levi, or especially, I mean, you are being supported by people, right? And we're going to see a lot of meforshim who say that, like, you shouldn't accept gifts from people, you should just depend on Shemayim. And the funny thing here is, like, that is you depending on Shemayim, right? It's like the Torah set this up for you. Yeah.
But to that point, I think it still could be viewed as a gift because, for example, by Truma, you choose the God to give it to. So still has the aspect.
There's a personal element.
I picked you, not
Yeah,
that
right,
guy,
right.
and that creates
That's interesting.
Not for all of them.
I like
Right,
you better.
some of
when
them.
you're-
Bonus goes to the people that
For Konos,
are-
Right. Yeah, Isaac?
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, good. Okay, so now let's look at, we have Moshe Rosenthal's interpretation. The subject is how any free gain can sully your reputation based on the associations and assumptions people make, regardless of whether they have any basis in reality. The first half means that one who illegally gains sullies his household in terms of perception. Either these people are contributing to that illegal gain or are associated with it as beneficiaries, meaning the people in your house. For example, Bernie Madoff, in Bernie Madoff's case, one or two of his kids committed suicide, not because they did anything wrong, but because the fallout and tarnishing of their name was so bad by association with their father. Second half is saying that even if you aren't doing something illicit, you should still be wary of accepting a gift because people will make similar assumptions and associations. As for the middleman, even if you don't commit crimes, you might still accept gifts and open yourself up to this kind of problem. So I saw one of the meforshim say this. Who was it? Was it the, I don't think I highlighted it, unfortunately. Not Rabbi Yonah. No. Maybe it was the Malbim. Let's see. Ocher beso botea bata mishu bots. Oh no, it was a Rabbi Sheshes. Yeah, I think this is what he says. So he says, we got to get Torah Chaim to print an updated Mishlei Torah Chaim with all of my meforshim in it. Yeah, right. Ocher beso botea bata. Ocher milashon ע.כ.ר Mosi. So he quotes the pasuk by Yaakov. ע.כ.ר avi es ha'aretz. Then he quotes the pasuk by Shmuel. Inyano habilbul. Bilbul Begins. This is the confusion. Uvelashon Razal uv'mayim achurim shano. So this is dirty waters. Yomar ki habotzea bata klomer hagozel v'hachomin mamon acherim. Someone who steals and covets the money of others. Hu mavalbel es shelo. So he's messing up his own money. So he's learning beso as his estate. Okay, which is nothing we didn't really say, like his in all of his possessions. Why? Even the money he had, which was not from Gezel, al hakol yikar shem hagezel, the chalos shem Gezel will be on all of them, right? You see, he's a brisker. Uvasof yotziu mimenu o miyorshav chel bala v'yakieno, and at the end, it's going to be taken from him or from his inheritors, as it says in Eov, he swallowed fortune and vomited it. In Cain, hare beso shalzeh klumer mamono achur umuvulbal. So it's gonna dirty the money that you have, even if you accept just a little bit, because now everything is in suspicion, and people will look. I'm sure Bernie Madoff, was a successful businessman before he launched the Ponzi scheme, so he's adding to that wealth. But it doesn't matter because people are it's gonna corrupt the entire thing. Or with we see this also with like charitable organizations, that if they do something sketchy, it throws the entire charity into question. So I think that's a good support for that approach. Okay, and then the other idea we had was Moshe Koppel's idea. So the Havamina is that a person thinks that the way a person gains money has no effect on the people around him, especially specifically his family. But if you gain that money in a shady way, it will affect your family because it'll corrupt your character, and that will affect your family. On the flip side, you might say, okay, as long as they don't make money illicitly, I'm good. The second half is warning you about a similar form of corruption, which is living off gifts. It's not illegal, and it's entirely based on the consent of the gift giver, but it can still corrupt you in similar ways and affect your household. And then Ariel pointed out that both methods of livelihood where you're dependent on other people are not sustainable. So I have an approach. I'm going to go to Rashi, okay, because I believe I remember Rabbi Moskowitz's pshat, and I tried to find it. I'm pretty sure it's on a tape in TTL, but I just looked in and couldn't find it really quickly. So so Rashi says, Where's Rashi? Okay. Ocher beso mishu botzea batza. Okay, so he learns it as stealing. You'll see from the second half. Okay, so since he hates gifts, then kol shekain he's going to hate robbery. So the big question here is what's the kol shekain, right? So and let's just have a working definition of. I remember once getting into an argument in yeshiva about whether kol shekain and kal v'chomer were the same or not.
I think we said this had this conversation.
Oh yeah,
Probably not. That's my guess.
oh yeah. I don't know. I mean, if anything, kal v'chomer is a subcategory of kol shekain because kal v'chomer is going from kal to chomer, whereas kol shekain can go both ways, I think. But yeah, all right. Well, what's your working definition of either kal v'chomer or kol shekain, right? And just to have a test example, you cannot say, for example, I like smartphones. Kal v'chomer, I love skiing. Like that is a misfire of a right. So what determines whether it's a legitimate kal v'chomer or not? Yeah.
Well, I mean, my first thought would be that if you have something included in the first thing, then kol shekain, if whatever you feel towards the first that you have, or whatever the rule is towards the first, the rule is towards the
Okay, I hear that definition. Yeah, Sean?
Yeah, I see it more as the kol shekain it's an exact parallel, whereas the kal v'chomer is talking about a particular dimension of this thing, and so just like in this dimension of this thing, therefore that.
Yeah.
In this one too, therefore.
Oh, that might be a difference between kal v'chomer and kol shekain. I'm just asking though, when do you have? What does kol shekain mean? Like, how does a fortiori reasoning work? Yeah.
It is when you have one statement or one statement or thing that is implied in it, or it says a specific amount of rules, then certainly then something else that would meet even. Never mind.
You're dancing around it. Yeah.
I would just take that. I think what I said was b'chal masai mana.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Not all necessary deductions are kal v'chomer or kol shekain, right? Yeah. You can't say if A equals B and B equals C, then kol shekain A equals C. Like that's yeah.
Well, what I understand, a kal v'chomer is when you have two things and they have a commonality.
Good.
And within that commonality, you see by one of them a certain thing expressed, and with the other thing, that commonality exists to a greater degree, so that expression will always also exist.
Yeah, right. So I think I have a similar idea, which is that in order to have a kol shekain, you need a common quality, but with a quantitative difference, right? And if the statement is true of a lower threshold quantity, then certainly would apply to the greater threshold quantity.
Yeah.
Right? So for example, if stealing $1 is gonna get you in trouble, then kol shekain stealing $100. So they are both forms of theft, and if the punishment is chal on the lesser quantity, then it would be chal on the greater quantity.
But I don't think that it goes from lower to higher because.
So for kal v'chomer, I think it does, but the kol shekain, I think you could go both ways, meaning that if something is true of the greater one, like if then you could go for the lesser one. I think that's like the
It's just like it's kal and chomer are different depending on the service.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Okay. So the big question here is on the surface, matanos and gazela are not sharing a common quality because one is legal and by the consent of the guy who's giving them the gift, and the other one is illegal and you're taking it against as well, right? So the question we have to have here is, to answer this is what is this kol shekain? Yeah, Isaac?
I think he's talking about. I think the kol shekain is along the axis of getting money that you didn't earn.
Right. Okay. Good.
So, if you don't even want money that someone's freely giving you that you didn't earn,
yeah,
you're not going to want money that you're stealing from someone else.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. So I'll tell you the way I remember Rabbi Moskowitz putting it. And again, I don't. This is so long ago. I don't really know if this is accurate. But if someone finds it, let me know. In the shiurim. So in Pirkei, Rabbi Moskowitz did it through Pirkei Avos here. So 5:10. Arba midos ba'adam. Yeah.
I was just thinking that.
Okay, yeah, nice. Ha'omer shali v'shalcha shalach. I don't know why it changes from shalcha to shalach. I always quote it shalach, but
I
whatever.
don't remember hearing us did that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Unless you hold that the Mishnah was bal peh, right?
Peh.
Like Isaac holds. Yeah, yeah, and then it was that much later. What was that?
I said it's pretty clear that it was.
Yeah, just not to Rabbi Binyamin Lau, who says in a 2-page chapter, this is a question and it can't be resolved. So, but anyway, but what does he know? He's only an academic who just researches this for his whole life. Yeah, anyway, but where's the Rambam know either? Yeah, I'm just, yeah. Anyway, that's a side issue. Yeah.
Isaac, what's your response?
No. There's evidence on both sides. Okay, yeah. Anyway, so one who says what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours, zomida benonis, that is the intermediary mida, or yesh omim zomida sodom, or some say it's mida sodom. Shali shalach shalcha shali, what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine, am haaretz, communist. Shali shalach 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 chasid, what's mine is yours and what's yours is yours, chasid. That's, I think chasid here is generous. I don't think pious. I don't, like from chesed. Shali shali v'shalach shali rasha. What's mine is mine, what's yours is mine is a rasha, right? So what Rabbi Moskowitz always pointed out for this is the premise of anyone who steals money, right? Because if they steal money, they view that as justified, but if someone steals from them, then that's a bad guy. So it's a contradiction, right? So what's the root of the contradiction? The root of the contradiction is I am entitled to your stuff, right? Or I'm entitled to good. It depends on how you want to put it, right? So the way Rabbi Moskowitz explained it is that at the root of all gezel is this feeling of entitlement. And the thing is when someone gives you a gift, it caters to that feeling of entitlement. You're like, oh, there's a in Seinfeld, what I always associate to it in Seinfeld is there would be these certain times where they would have like the inner monologue in Jerry's mind, or Elaine would do this a lot, but yeah, in Jerry's mind. And I think there's I don't even know what episode it was. Someone like praises him and he goes like, yeah, mom was right. I am special, Yeah. Yeah, I remember the circumstance. But so like I feel like that's a thing. When someone gives you a gift, it's like a vindication of, oh yeah, I do deserve this, So it's catering to that feeling of I'm entitled to free stuff, or I'm entitled to other people's stuff, or I'm entitled to stuff that I didn't earn, like whatever the emotion is. So the thing is if you respond to gifts with that like reaction of like, I don't want to indulge the feeling of entitlement because that's a dangerous emotion, which can lead to kochib otim yadi asal yasgayel, and on the extreme of gezel, I'm so entitled that I'll take it and I'm right to take it, so then that's going to really be a getter against gezel. Yeah, Sean?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this idea yesterday.
Yeah.
Playing with it a little bit. My only question is, for the first half,
yeah,
why are we focused on Bezo instead of the person? If it's just his like feeling of this is mine,
yeah,
why is the pasuk really focusing on Bezo?
That's a good question. So I think there's actually several answers you can give, because I think you can say that we really have to answer the question of so what for the first half, right? Like in general, right? So I think you can mix and match of the ideas that we said. So you can say, for example, that this feeling of entitlement, one of the things that's wrong with gezel is that it is, is that it's unjust. Another one that it's illegal. Another one that harms people. But another one is if you are feeding that sense of entitlement, that will lead to bad decision making, and that could jeopardize all of your wealth. If you say Bezo is your estate. But I think the reason why I went to this now is because I think Moshe's idea is that that you are going to, that sense of entitlement, I think, is the big corrupting factor here in gezel, and that's going to infect your household. And this is my nuance here, and you can challenge this, but the question of why, I don't think we asked this. Do we ask why Bezo? No, we kind of asked this. Bezo is his whole house, but Yichya is just him, right? So the thing is that and again, this is a secondary idea. This is not a primary idea, but I think if you get bad midos, those by default will be passed on to your kids. But if you develop good midos, that's not a guarantee, meaning that you'll set them up in a good way, but like it's not going to automatically be passed down. So it's certain that you are going to be yechia, but it's not necessarily going to be for your kids. And I do think, by the way, that in this emotion in particular, there are bad midos that have to be developed, but entitlement is one that you're born with. Babies are born to feel entitled because they literally get everything for free, and they're literally in a world of just their own ego. And a person has to develop out of that. But if you're catering to it as an adult and your kids are born into a household where they are automatically feeling that way, and you're profiting off of other people's material goods, that's just going to automatically perpetuate itself.
God, my students.
This relates very much to two pasukim ago.
Let's look.
We're also talking about
First time.
Base game Yisach Hashem, the house of the haughty will be uprooted by Hashem. Yeah, that's a good connection. I'm kind of surprised that Rabbi Moskowitz doesn't point that out. Because it's a haughty, it's an egocentric emotion, and it's going to result in the destruction of the house. Yeah, in fact, you know what?
What about
I wonder. Hold on a second. I wonder if you could link the three, right, by saying that. Well, we said the first and the third, but the Toavos Hashem Machshavos Ra. Utorim Imre Noam. So the Machshavos Ra would be the way that the haughty person plans to get to be Botzei Batza.
I think there's two ways that you can express this haughtiness.
Yeah.
One is in your plans.
Yeah.
And the other is in your actions, right? It's heart and body.
Yeah.
Or mind and body.
Right.
So this is talking about the two ways that you end up becoming this base game.
Right. That's good. Right. It's top down or bottom up. Yeah. I also want to say, by the way, that my interpretation of the Sona Matanos, I think, is I just want to reiterate it in terms of this idea, is that the actionable dimension of the pasuk is that you have, obviously you have to not engage in gezel, but the main thing is that you have to reprogram your default reaction to matanos to be like wary. And this is, so I think it's actually easier because of Isaac's idea. From a purely Mishleic consequence standpoint, you could be wary because you don't want to have strings attached, but then more so you have to be wary of, I'm catering to this feeling of entitlement, and that's a dangerous thing to stoke your ego like that. So like, if you have that attitude, then even if you accept a gift, occasionally, then it's not going to be as destructive. But if you just dive into it, then that's going to be really, really bad. Yeah.
So what about like a guy like Robin Hood? I'm serious.
Usher. Yeah.
No,
right.
of course it's Usher. My question is like just from the the entitlement issue. You see what he steals from the rich and gives it to the poor? Yeah. That's more, but the Mida itself, is that a part of an entitlement for himself, or he doesn't really care about himself?
It depends on whether Robin Hood is Lishma or Lo Lishma, right? I don't know enough about his character. Because the idea behind Robin Hood is that it's justice. Yeah, but the problem is it's like vigilante justice, and it's like messing up the entire system, Yeah,
how do they get away with that movie?
Well, it's an emotion that a lot of not rich people have, is like, and look, by the way, I don't know how much of a problem this is. No, it's got to be a problem in New York, because that's why all the CVSs have everything locked up. But like, I know that it's a thing, certainly on the west, on the left coast, is that people steal from stores, and it's just like, yeah, these are just rich capitalist companies that are, and they just feel like they're totally entitled to steal, And I think that's another thing, is like, that's the actual bridge to like actual theft. Like, you just rationalize it, Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing though. We haven't even touched the mainstream opinion. Mainstream opinion is what we read yesterday in the Metzudas David, but I want to read it there and then in Rabbeinu Yonah. And I don't have an answer to this, okay? So we'll hopefully we'll get an idea. So Metzudas David. Someone who commits theft in order to increase for himself, yashchis beso, there you go, yashchis, right? Corrupts, destroys. This came and he lost this, meaning we said yesterday that means like he takes in the stuff that he steals, but then he's going to lose money. Someone who hates even gifts, he yishan bashem, because he relies on Hashem. then God will give him increased life, which is not something that people can give. Okay, hold that thought. Let's do Rabbeinu Yonah, and I'm going to do Rabbeinu Yonah on the handout. Okay, Ocher Beis Botei Bata Hu Shehigia El. So he starts off like Rabbi Moskowitz. El Tachlis Hachemda. So it's interesting. He frames Gezel as the ultimate expression of covetousness, right? So halachically, lo sachmod is that if you want what someone else has and then you get them to transfer the possession, right? Even if you get them to sell it, you violate lo sachmod. But if you steal it, then that's definitely an expression of lo sachmod. Visone, but the reason why I'm saying this like Rabbi Moskowitz is chemda is the avera associated to entitlement. Like this is mine, you know. Visone matanos hushi higia el hakate ha'achron b'chiyuv harchakas hachemda. So hating gifts is the opposite extreme from covetousness. B'chayvetz sheyihiu mizonosa bidei shemayim uviyagia kapav. And he desires that his sustenance be in the hands of heaven and through his own work. V'hine zos hamida geder laharchakas hachemda. This mida of sinas matanos is a geder for distancing yourself from chemda. V'tatil mimokshe hachanufa, and it will save you from the snares of flattery. Okay, so here he's also putting this emphasis on wanting to be sustained bidei shemayim and from your own work. Okay, let's also do. I forgot if I put the Rabag in the back of there. If not, then the Rabag will be on the screen here. Rabag also says. Mishu lokeach shochad. So he puts it matanos in terms of shochad, which we also didn't explore. Someone who takes a bribe, ladun din, to make enact a judgment. Who ocher beso umashchis, another mashchis one. He corrupts and sullies his house. Behefech mashu choshev, which is the opposite of what he plans. In other words, I think the guy thinks he's going to enrich his household through doing this because he's getting something out of it, but he's really corrupting it. V'amnam mishu sone af gam hamatanos, someone who hates even matanos, v'lo yirte l'lakcha mihanashim, and doesn't want to accept it from people. Yichya v'yiskayim, he will live and be sustained. Lefishu boteach b'Hashem yisala ve'eno nishna al matanos hanashim. He relies on God and doesn't rely on human gifts. And let's do one more of the Malbim, who says, Mishu botzea bata shemarviach mamon below shelo b'yosher. So someone who profits illegally. Bal taksho ki yarbe bebetza halaz. Covered besa. He should not think that he's going to enhance the esteem of his household through this profit, through this gain. Behefech was that ocher besa. So I think he's also using yash ocher as tarnishing the kavod of his house, not troubling the kavod of his household. Kamosha kasav havi botzea batza. Ra levesa v'gule ki even mikir tizak. He quotes pasukim to support this. Uvehevech mishasone afim matanos v'lo yihi mishal acherim. Sorry, yehana mishal acherim. Someone who hates gifts and does not get hana from others' possessions. Rav mashem arviach aidei yigia kapo. He only profits through his own effort. Bal tomar sheyamus bara'av o yechala mirov avoda. He should not say that he's going to die of starvation or work himself to sickness. Behefech. Opposite. He'll live, meaning he will not die and he'll be healthy. So the question is like, what's this idea that connects to relying on the hashgacha? And I'm fine, by the way, saying, like, you see the meforshim all get to that idea, whether you're talking about what basa is stealing, accepting bribes. You know, I think the main idea here is hashgacha.
I'm sorry, can you explain exactly like what your question is? Like,
so my question is, all of these meforshim say that if you gain illegally,
right,
you think you're going to increase your household or your state, but you're really going to destroy it.
Okay.
But if you don't accept gifts and you hate gifts and you don't benefit from other people and you only rely on God and your own hard work, so not only will you not die, but you'll live because you'll rely on God and he'll sustain you. And honestly, I mean, I got to quote my favorite Rambam and Zera'im. Okay, right? I mean, this is what the Rambam says in the anyone can be a Levi halacha, right? So we might as well take a fresh look at that because that's an important thing. Okay.
Rambam a Levi?
Yes. Until his brother died. No, he wasn't a halacha Levi. He was this kind of Levi, right? Yeah, no, he wasn't a
So his
halacha
brother
Levi.
guy
Yeah,
also like why did something? Yeah, I was like, how do you change to Levi?
yeah, right, yeah.
Is that like a joke or
some
something?
din in Yibum I'm not aware of. Yeah.
Is that a joke or was
Well,
that
are you familiar with this halacha?
no?
All right. So the halacha says this is in Shemitah V'Yovot 13:12. V'lama los yizke Levi b'nachalas Eretz Yisrael v'vizasa im echav. Why did Shevet Levi not merit in the inheritance of the land of Israel and in its spoils like their brethren? Because they were separated to serve Hashem and to minister to him. And in order to teach God's upright ways and his righteous judgments to the masses, to the people. They should teach your judgments to Jacob and your Torah to Israel. Therefore, they were separated from the ways of the world. They should not go to war like the rest of the Jews, and they do not inherit, and they don't merit for themselves through their bodily effort. They're the army of Hashem. Hashem blesses his army. V'hu baruch hu zocha. I think chel here means army, not wealth. V'hu baruch hu zika lahem, and God is the thing that they merit, is the one that they merit. Hashem says, I am your portion and your inheritance. Now here's everyone can be a Levi halacha. Not only Shevet Levi, ela kol ish v'ish mikol baya olam. Any human being, not even Jews, any human being, asher nadva rucha oso, whose spirit motivates him, v'havin mida'ato, this is a machlokes in the girsa, and he understands, his mind makes him understand, lihibadel, to separate himself, la'amod lifnei Hashem, l'sharso lo'ovdo, to stand before Hashem, to minister to him, and to serve him, l'dea as Hashem, to know God, v'halach yashar, k'moshe asahu elokim, and he walks upright as God made him, uparak me'al tzavaro ol ha'chishvonos harabim, and he removes from upon his neck the yoke of the calculations of the many, the schemes of the many, asher bikshu b'nei adam, that people seek. That's a reference to Koheles. So then he becomes sanctified with the utmost sanctity. And Hashem will be his portion and his inheritance forever and ever. And he'll merit in this world enough revenue from Substack. I mean, enough to support him. And Kamosh Zika la Kohanim Levim, as the Kohanim Levim merit. David Omer, Hashem menaschalki v'kosi Ata tomech gorli. I think that's how you punctuate it. Hashem is the portion of my inheritance, and my kos here means not cup, but my portion, like the michsas nefashos. Ata tomech gorli, you support my lot. So the idea there is, the Rambam is saying like that there is this thing where anyone, even though Levim and Kohanim halachically are supported by people, what happened to the Rambam?
So one of the tabs there.
Yeah, I know. Did I? Oh, there. Thank you. So then anyone in humanity who devotes himself to the Yedias Hashem and separates from the calculations of the many, trying to like get ahead, the rat race, so to speak, Hashem will make sure that he gets everything that's enough. So
what's it with his brother?
So his brother supported him in learning, and then his brother died, and then the Rambam had to go make a living, and then his learning was never the same because he had to like work for the Sultan all day.
Yeah, but why can't you still function as a Levi if like you're?
I'm sure he tried.
I understand, but why can't you still serve God and all? But you have to support yourself.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Interesting though.
Yeah.
He didn't just say, "Okay, God will find me another way. I'll continue to learn."
Yeah.
He did go out and get a job.
Right. But that's also partially because of his shita about taking money for Torah, right? I mean, the many people who disagree with him would say that the way that this happens is people support you in learning Torah, and that's definitely the mainstream opinion now, even though there are people who take advantage of that, right?
So they quote this Rambam.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which is definitely not the Rambam shita. I mean, he's quoting.
You get support by others. The Yizka Lo almost like the Ramasik Lo.
Right.
So yeah. Going back to your question, what was your question again?
My question is, what is this idea of hating matanos and relying on God being the opposite of botea bata ochar beso? Yeah, but we're done here for today, unless you have an idea.
Well,
yeah.
I'm just want to point out, it's interesting that this, where we got this arm from, is also
yeah.
So that even if you want to rely on God, you shouldn't be trying to take tzedakah for that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I do think you could say that the very opposite of trusting in God
Yeah.
is stealing.
That's definitely true.
Your own needs.
Right. You're violating Ratzon Hashem to get
Yeah.
money from people to depend on them. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good start. Right. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Ian. All right. Good pasuk though.
Yeah, very
I feel like this is a good starter pasuk in Mishlei also, not just because it's well known, but because it really illustrates a lot of Mishleic